On Sunday, March 29, 1997, at 7:00 p.m., in Jacksonville, Florida, an armored truck eases through the gates of Loomis Fargo's cash depot, one of the largest cash handling and transport companies in the United States. Its reinforced shell carries the weight of a city's commerce, collected dollar by dollar from retail stores overflowing with pre-Easter weekend crowds. As the final logbook entries are made, the steel doors roll shut behind them. Nothing seems unusual. Inside, the driver punches out and heads home as scheduled, leaving the second-man courier, Noel Johnson, alone to supervise the last routine handoff of the shift, just as company policy dictates. He moves slowly and deliberately, familiar with every corner of this building, every voice on this floor, and every second of protocol that governs the end of the day. And then, in one unremarkable moment, he walks outside to his personal car, opens the trunk, and pulls out a black duffel bag packed not with gym clothes or snacks, but with a revolver, rope, duct tape, and a plan 5 years in the making. When he walks back in, he doesn't hesitate. He doesn't make a speech or yell for attention. He simply draws the stolen gun, raises it to eye level, and locks eyes with Dan Smith, one of the 2 guards he's worked beside for years, then says, quietly and without inflection, "Back against the wall. Hands up." At first, they think it's a joke, until they see the look on his face, and the seconds feel like hours. By the time the vault door swings closed behind him for the last time, Johnson will have tied up 2 coworkers, stolen more than $18.8 million in cash, and vanished into the night without a trace. And by the time the FBI arrives, the man with the dead-end job has already made the single largest solo cash heist in U.S. history. The plan looks simple until you understand this wasn't about money. Not really. Noel Johnson is a courier for Loomis Fargo, and for most of the 10 years he spends on the job, he does what's expected of him. No more, no less. He doesn't raise his voice, stir trouble, show up late, or say little at all, except to tell you what time the shift ends or where to stack the money bags, and that's usually enough to keep him invisible. Day after day, he walks alone into strip malls and storefronts with a pistol at his waist and canvas bags slung over his shoulder, collecting thousands in cash. At the same time, the driver waits behind bulletproof glass, locked in, silent, and under strict orders to never open the door under pressure. Not for anyone, not even for him. He gets $7 an hour, but does not receive hazard pay, health benefits, overtime, a pension, or an exit plan. And when the sun sets, and he counts the weight of what he's just hauled in, sometimes more than he'll earn in a decade, he doesn't complain to supervisors or file formal requests. He just folds his uniform, shuts his locker, and clocks out with the same face he clocked in with. But inside, something is building. He watches new hires come and go, colleagues move on to better jobs, bills stack up, and dreams shrink down. And no one at Loomis Fargo notices that the man holding the vault keys is slowly checking out until it's too late. Because Johnson isn't fantasizing, he's planning. Investigators later learn that he began laying down the blueprint as early as 1992, forging IDs, memorizing procedures, cataloging storage facilities out of state, and testing how long it takes to load a full van without triggering alarms. He never talks about what he's building, never lets it slip. Not to friends, not to family, not even to the coworkers he'll one day handcuff to a closet pipe. But by the time March 29, 1997 arrives, every second of his shift is already accounted for. It's just past sundown, and the Loomis Fargo warehouse is nearly empty. The final cash runs of the day have been delivered. The armored truck is parked, the vault is stacked high, and the steel gate has rolled shut behind the last of the weekend drivers. Easter Sunday is hours away, security is light, and everything feels routine. Johnson lingers by the exit, waiting, because company policy says the courier must stay behind after the driver leaves and remain on site until the vault is sealed, The money is counted, and all entries are logged. It's a minor detail, but it's the detail that the plan depends on. At 6:58 p.m., he steps outside to the employee lot, opens his trunk, and lifts the duffel bag he had packed. Inside it had gloves, duct tape, a revolver he's taken from another guard's locker, spare shackles, rope, and plastic sheeting. He walks back in without raising any suspicion and meets Smith, who checks the vault ledgers, while Brown verifies receipts. They've done this closing routine 1,000 times before, until now. Johnson steps through the door, raises the weapon, and issues a single command: back against the wall, hands on your head. They pause, and one of them asks if he's joking. He doesn't answer and directs them calmly and quickly. The instruction was to bind your hands, lie on the ground, don't speak, and when they hesitate, he presses the barrel of the gun tighter. Within minutes, both men are zip-tied, shackled, and face down in the vault room. Johnson checks the security feed, confirms no one else is inside, then disappears out the side door, only to return moments later behind the wheel of a company van, unmarked, with the back cleared for cargo. He backs it into the vault corridor and begins to load. Not the coins and definitely not the small bills. Just stacks of 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s. Carefully bundled, unmarked, non-sequential, one bag at a time. He transfers the cash from the vault to the van, stacking them shoulder-high floor to ceiling, until the interior is packed with canvas sacks holding more than $18 million in silent weight. There is no rush because he is used to the system and knows the next shift will arrive in the morning. Before driving off, he adjusts the final pieces, grabs his personnel file, removes the security tapes, and resets the vault timer so it won't open again until Sunday afternoon. Then he moves the 3 cars, his, Smith's, and Brown's, out of the employee lot, ensuring no one will suspect the guards are still inside. Finally, he turns off the lights, pulls the gate closed behind him, and drives into the night. The van is packed to the ceiling, floor to roof, with bundles of cash in denominations of 10s and higher, stacked in canvas bags that now hold more money than any single person has ever stolen alone in American history. He pulls into the empty road with 2 bound men in the back, and nothing in his path but the silence of a perfectly working plan. He doesn't drive recklessly or fast. Instead, he moves with the calmness of a man who knows the shift change won't happen until morning, that the vault won't open until noon the next day, and that no one, absolutely no one, has reason yet to believe that the building behind him is now empty, breached, and stripped of nearly $19 million in federal money. His coworkers lie shackled in the back, their eyes covered, their wrists cut red from the restraints, and their breathing is shallow. Their voices stay quiet. Johnson doesn't threaten them, doesn't rant, doesn't shout. He simply tells them what to do, step by step, like he's still following company protocol, like this entire operation is just another line item on the end-of-day checklist. They drive north through the night, slipping through highway junctions and fuel stops, where Johnson pays in exact cash and avoids cameras without trying. He drives the van a short distance to his home. He takes Brown out of the van, cuffs him to a closet pipe, and leaves him there. Brown is a liability he can deal with later, but Johnson gets back into the van with Smith and drives away. While the van hums against the asphalt, he breaks the silence, not with threats but with something stranger, a series of questions. He wants to know why Dan Smith never asked him out for a beer after all these years working the same shifts, why no one ever invited him to lunch, and why he spent every break alone at the edge of the break room table. In contrast, the others swapped stories and shared jokes, explaining why he was always there, but never part of anything. Smith doesn't have an answer, and Johnson doesn't push for one. Then he goes on rants about his job and his life. For 10 years, he worked for Loomis Fargo, 10 years of low pay, no benefits, and no overtime. He talks about the company's indifference and his own loneliness. It is a bizarre conversation, He talks as if Smith is a friend, a passenger on a road trip, not a hostage. It is a moment of stark, raw desperation. He has just stolen millions, but is still the same man, trapped by the same frustrations. Money is not a solution. It is a grand, violent statement. And then, deep in the early morning fog somewhere outside Asheville, the van slows and turns off the main road, pulling into a quiet storage facility tucked behind a row of darkened trees. Though Smith can't see the details from where he lies under the blanket, he hears the sound of a metal door rolling up, feels the shift of weight as Johnson lifts the bags, one by one, and disappears them into a unit not 10 feet away, sealing them behind a door no one will think to check for months. And then, when the money is secured and the van is light again, Johnson drives farther into the hills, deeper into the quiet, until finally, at the edge of a wooded stretch near the Blue Ridge Mountains, he pulls over once more, walks Smith into the trees, handcuffs him gently to a pipe, leaves him with water, food, warm clothes, and a promise that in 2 days, someone will come looking. He doesn't look back, and when he drives away, he doesn't leave a trail. Fast forward to Easter Sunday, which begins like any other quiet holiday morning at the Loomis Fargo compound. Dim lights flickering on, a few early arrivals waiting outside the locked gates, and a security supervisor fumbling through a ring of master keys he's never had reason to use until now. Because the front door won't open, the alarm won't disarm, and most importantly, the vault won't respond. The staff had arrived expecting routine, but they found themselves standing in front of a locked facility that should never have been locked from the inside, staring at systems that should never be off without warning, and waiting on backup that had no idea it was walking into the aftermath of the largest inside job in armored truck history. The call to management goes out fast, followed by the call to police, and not long after, the FBI. But even the federal agents, arriving within hours of that first phone line going dead, can't get into the vault immediately because Johnson has done more than disappear. He's rigged the timer, set it manually the night before to delay opening until well past noon, buying himself a half-day head start and forcing every investigator, technician, and senior staff member to stand outside the crime scene with nothing but questions and a growing sense of dread. The silence inside is immediate and total when they finally override the delay, and the vault door peels back. Just a space, stripped clean of everything above $5 bills. Every coin stack untouched, every high-value bundle missing, and no explanation except for 3 names missing from the roster: Dan Smith, Terry Brown, and Philip Noel Johnson. Finding the first clue didn't take long, as the surveillance tapes and Johnson's personnel file were gone. The FBI doesn't wait for theories. They move fast, flagging every camera feed within the greater Jacksonville area, every storage facility rental, every known alias tied to Johnson's prior addresses, and every gas station or interstate checkpoint between Florida and the Carolinas, building a net they hope hasn't already been outrun. But then, just as they begin to search outward, word comes in from North Carolina. A forest ranger has picked up a man, shaken, tired, and handcuffed, walking out of the Blue Ridge woods with a story no one can quite believe. Dan Smith, one of the 2 missing guards, is alive and talking. By the time Dan Smith reaches the ranger station, he's been in the woods for nearly 2 days, covered in mud, dehydrated, and still wearing the same Loomis Fargo uniform he clocked into on Friday night. His wrists are raw from the handcuffs he managed to pick using a Swiss Army knife he kept hidden in his boot. His voice cracks from exhaustion as he tries to explain to the man behind the desk that he isn't a runaway, or a threat, or a prank caller. He's a hostage, just released by the guy who stole nearly $20 million from his own company. The call comes into Jacksonville just before noon. An FBI agent picks up the line, listens to the name, the coordinates, and the story, and dispatches a field team north to meet Smith in person. What he tells them isn't chaotic, which was intriguing. He describes Philip Johnson as calm, focused, and methodical. He never yelled, never panicked, and never explained more than necessary. He says the only time his voice wavered was when he asked why the others at work never included him in anything, why no one invited him for a drink, and why they always looked at him like he wasn't part of the team. Then he tells them about the van, about the quiet hours of driving through the night with only the sound of tires and plastic money bags shifting in the back. He tells them about the stop in Asheville, the sound of a metal door rolling up, the weight of bags being dragged across concrete, and the absence of any other voices, which tells the FBI what they already suspected. Johnson didn't have help. He wasn't part of a crew, didn't split the money, and didn't run. He stashed it somewhere close enough to access, but far enough to delay discovery. When agents reach Johnson's house later that day, they find the second hostage, Terry Brown, still alive, still shackled inside the small utility closet where Johnson left him 18 hours earlier, his wrists locked to a pipe, his body weak, but otherwise unharmed, with food, bottled water, and a warning not to try escaping. Both men are safe, and both men are talking. And with their statements on record, the Bureau now has two facts that matter more than anything else. One is that Johnson is alive, and the other is that the money is still somewhere in North Carolina. By the time the FBI has interviewed both guards and verified their timelines, more than 36 hours have passed since the vault was emptied, and Philip Noel Johnson vanished into the mountains. While the Bureau knows precisely how the heist was pulled off, where the money was last seen, and what kind of van he drove to get there, it has no idea where he is now. Every agency in the Southeast is alerted as helicopters sweep low over the Blue Ridge foothills. At the same time, undercover agents quietly move through bus terminals, storage facilities, and roadside rest stops across 3 states. The first real lead comes from an Army sergeant in Asheville, who calls in a tip about a white Loomis Fargo van abandoned behind a commercial lot. The driver's window is smashed, the keys are still in the ignition, and there is no sign of anyone inside. Within minutes, dozens of agents swarm the scene, locking down the entire area in the hope that Johnson is still nearby. But the moment they find the ticket stub on the van's dash, they know they're too late. The stub is for a one-way bus ride to Atlanta, and it has already departed. Inside the van is no cash, fingerprints, notebooks, or receipts. There is just clean metal flooring and the lingering smell of oil and exhaust, with no trail pointing forward. The search expands. The Bureau cross-checks every alias from Johnson's past. They follow false tips from Florida to Texas. They even searched the Canadian border based on a rumor that he was seen near Toronto. The problem isn't that Philip Johnson is reckless or messy. It's that he's invisible. He leaves no credit card trail, makes no phone calls, avoids contact with family, and refuses to brag or broadcast anything that might give him away. And every time the FBI shows up to chase a possible sighting, it turns out to be the wrong man, the wrong lead, or the right van in the wrong place. And for nearly 5 months, the trail stays cold. Behind the scenes, senior agents begin preparing for the possibility that Johnson got what he wanted, that the money is buried, the name is erased, and the man who once made $7 an hour is now drinking coffee on a beach under a new identity, watching headlines about himself on satellite television. But then, on August 30, 1997, a message flashes across the FBI wire. A man using the alias Roger Lauder has just been detained at the Gateway International Bridge at the U.S.-Mexico border. He was on a bus headed into Texas, and he was carrying just over $10,000 in cash. 5 months after the largest solo cash heist in U.S. history, Philip Noel Johnson steps onto a northbound Greyhound bus headed from Mexico into Texas, his beard longer, his hair heavier, his name changed, and his story rehearsed just enough to get by. But at the Gateway International Bridge in Brownsville, U.S. Customs and Border Protection Officer Virginia Rodriguez boards that bus like she always does, clipboard in hand. She is trained to check documents and listen to hesitations, voice shifts, sideways glances, and the small human giveaways that paperwork doesn't show. She stops at a man seated near the rear, who claims to be returning from visiting friends in Mexico for 2 weeks. Everything about him, his calm tone, his quiet posture, the North Carolina driver's license in his hand, feels just close enough to normal to pass, except for the way he says it, a little too polished, a little too slow, as if he's trying to remember what his face is supposed to look like when it tells the truth. Rodriguez doesn't raise her voice or call for backup. She simply hands the license to her partner and asks him to run it through the NCIC database while she continues her inspection. She opens the man's luggage at the same steady pace she uses for every passenger on every other bus. She finds over $10,000 in U.S. cash, neatly stacked in rubber-banded rolls inside his bag. It is not illegal on its own, but it is enough to warrant questions, especially when paired with a man who can't stop blinking when he says, "Just visiting." And then her partner returns. No words, just a silent nod and a printout in hand. Confirming that the name on the license, Roger D. Lauder, isn't real, that the man sitting quietly on the bus is in fact Philip Noel Johnson, and that the file tied to his real identity doesn't just raise a red flag, it lights up the screen with a single line in bold, unmistakable type. "Will extradite from anywhere in the world." Johnson is taken into custody without incident, without protest, and without asking a single question about what gave him away. The heist is over, but the money is still missing. And when federal agents arrive to question him, offering reduced time, negotiation deals, and legal leverage in exchange for the cash return, Johnson says nothing, convinced that his storage unit in North Carolina remains untouched, invisible, and waiting. But he doesn't realize that the trail he thought he'd buried is already being unearthed, because when investigators sweep the room he'd rented in Mexico City, they find a yellow slip of paper buried between loose receipts and discarded papers. It's small, faded, and easy to overlook, just another scrap of paper buried in a stack of forgotten receipts. Still, for the agents searching the rented room in Mexico City, it's exactly what they've been hoping to find. A Mountain Home mini storage receipt, dated the week of the heist, and for them, that's all they need. Just after 2:00 a.m. on September 17, a pair of FBI agents lifts the steel roll-up door of Unit 147, 15 miles south of Asheville, and steps into a concrete locker filled from floor to ceiling with black canvas, Loomis Fargo bags, untouched, unmarked, and still stacked as Johnson had placed them 5 months earlier. They count every dollar, which amounts to a total of $18.8 million, minus around $100,000. Sitting next to it, folded neatly in a plastic tote, is a copy of If I'm So Wonderful, Why Am I Still Single?, a paperback on clinical depression, and the last fragments of a man who disappeared for a dream no one else believed he could pull off. Later, under pressure, Johnson gives up another $65,000, hidden across 8 Mexican bank accounts. With nearly all of the money recovered, 2 hostages alive and cooperating, a paper trail that spans 5 years, and a direct arrest tied to a federal warrant, Philip Noel Johnson pleads guilty without argument to armed robbery, kidnapping, money laundering, and violation of interstate commerce under the Hobbs Act, charges that, stacked together, carry a maximum sentence of life in prison and $1 million fine. However, the actual number he receives is both symbolic and crushing: 25 years in a federal correctional facility with no possibility of parole. He is 33 years old when he pulls off the heist, 56 by the time he walks out of prison. And by then, most people have already forgotten his name. The judge doesn't ask why he did it, because the evidence speaks louder than intent, and because Johnson himself never testifies, never explains, never shows remorse, and never tries to spin the story into anything more noble than what it was. A man who spent a decade underpaid, unacknowledged, and slowly convinced himself that walking out with $18.8 million was not just possible, but fair. He is ordered to pay $59,834.70 in restitution to Loomis Fargo, and that debt is paid off slowly, not through accounts or holdings, but through prison labor. Johnson earns less than $1 an hour mopping floors, folding uniforms, and performing custodial work inside a facility that looks nothing like the vault he once emptied. He does not become a cult figure or a prison celebrity. He is just another quiet inmate with a number on his chest and a story that fades every year until it becomes a footnote in Bureau of Prisons paperwork and local archives in Jacksonville. Johnson was released from prison on October 3, 2019, after serving 21 years. He is a free man, but the story of the $7 an hour guard who took on the system is cemented in history. He became a folk hero to many, a symbol of the underdog fighting back against a faceless corporation. He enters a world of smartphones, streaming services, biometric scanners, and digital banking. This world has moved so far past cash that the kind of crime he committed feels almost ancient, almost analog, like a story told from a different era. The money is recovered and the criminal is punished. But for a few months, Philip Johnson showed that an average man with a 5-year plan and a deep-seated resentment could become a legend. This is the true story of the most dangerous takedown in FBI history. The money wasn't the point. It never was. And the last known record of Philip Noel Johnson ends the same way his plan began, quietly, with no one watching, and no one quite sure what he wanted from the beginning.